Shalom, Kol Halal Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai Ba'Hashem HaKadosh. Double honors to the elder apostles of GMS, including the elders that came before them that taught us this truth. Shalom and salutations to all the brothers out pushing the word in truth and in sincerity, the hopeful elect tabernacle of David. All right, I got this excellent interview here that we'll get to, saying things that in the spirit are much closer to the truth than pretty much anything I've heard, and on par with the scriptures. So we're going to analyze this and hope that it's edifying to the body, to the elect, you brothers and few sisters. All right, so this is Gonzalo Lira's channel. 4 hours ago, this guy Scott Ritter, who is an analyst who is very well informed. He knows the players, he knows the climate, if you will, and he knows strategy. So let's listen to what he says, and this falls directly in line with pretty much everything I said yesterday at camp. This lets you know how close we are to this thing moving quickly toward World War III. All right, this thing is spiraling out of control. Between that and Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai forcing the hand of Vladimir Putin, who's back with a stronger, more well-armed army after the dissolution of the Soviet Union 30 to 40 years ago. All right, so let's listen. I'm going to play this little excerpt real quick, and then I'm going to bring out a scripture. If it'll start.
If you see my point.
No, I agree. I mean, I just think that this is a fiction that's being created by the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian nationalists and their supporters in the West. Again, primarily to demoralize Russia. I think that's the goal, is to try and overwhelm the Russians with.
All right, so he brought out a fiction. All right. What does that go into? That goes into propaganda. That goes into Matthew 24:6. Let's read the King James, and we'll read a couple of different versions, and then we'll get back to the interview, and we'll let as much of that play. It's a little over an hour, and I don't want to try to break down the whole thing. You'll have to go back and watch it for yourself, but I suggest that you do it. It's really informative. All right, Matthew 24:6 in the King James. And ye shall, and we are, ye shall hear of wars and rumors of war. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Okay, we're getting close. We're getting closer to the end. This is a sign. What are the signs of your coming? False prophets, deception, wars and rumors of wars. Okay, uprisings of the people, famine, pestilences, but this is a big one. All right, when you consider that Russia, all right, and Putin in this time is going to execute, if you will, the death blow, right, on Babylon the Great. Well, this is the beginning of that. All right, something happened. When speaking in this interview, they go into, well, Vladimir really didn't want this war, but he was goaded into it, if you will. Well, who's doing the goading? All right, that would be the Most High Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai, but then he works through men. So, all right, let's read a couple of these, just the first part. NIV, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. NLT, and you will hear of wars and threats of wars. Okay? Let's see. we'll just look for the different ones, right? And we do this all the time, but goes together with this perfectly, so why not? Aramaic Bible in plain English. It is going to happen that you are going to hear battles and reports of wars. Well, that's what this is. This is an interview where this guy goes in depth and tells you what's actually going on over there and what we're about to see. Not the propaganda, not the whatever he said, right? Fiction, all right? Fiction goes right into rumors. Contemporary English version. You will soon hear about wars and threats. Okay? We got reports, threats, rumors. Okay? Good News Translation. You're going to hear the noise of battles close by in the news. Okay? In the news. Our literal standard. And you will begin to hear of wars and reports. Okay? And that's what we're seeing, all of those things. Rumors, reports, news, threats. Now let's go back to Scott Ritter. We'll start at the top, and I'm going to play through. I'm going to get the gist of the situation, then I'm going to go to a spot where I think is very important. We'll try to keep it as short as possible. All right, again, Gonzalo Lira, his channel, 4 hours ago. All right, so this is relatively new. This is Scott Ritter and the Battle of Donbass. If you understand the Donbass region, that battle has been going on since 2013, 2014, when Vladimir had to go secure Crimea, because whatever's going on over there really started back then, okay? And now they have to, what we're watching is the beginning of Ezekiel 38, all right? Which is that the spirit of old Soviet Union coming back. And all of these countries are going to hate the whore here in a minute, because they're finding out all of these lies that are being told, right? Rumors, if you will, are poisoning the well, if you will, all right? Everybody gets their hopes up. Hey, we might be able to take Russia down. You're not taking Russia down. Okay, the men of the Lord, we know that because the Most High is going to use Russia and Vladimir Putin to give the death blow to the beast, if you will, all right, to Babylon the Great and the EU and NATO. All the players are there, and they actually say that closer to the end. NATO and the EU, blah, 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 blah. They don't go into the beast, but they are the beast, okay? So let's listen to this from the top, because it's very informative, and here we go.
Hey guys, this is Gonzalo Lira speaking to you live from Kharkov, Ukraine, where, well, there's this little war going on, and so it's very interesting. I'm joined here by Scott Ritter, that most of you know. He is the famous UN weapons inspector, and he is a military expert, and he has a very heterodox view of this war that has proven to be more accurate than most of the mainstream. And so we're going to get right into it, because we're assuming that all of you who are here know what this is going to be about, which is the Battle of the Donbass, the famous cauldron that we've been predicting, everybody in the alt media has been predicting for the last few weeks. And Scott, why don't you take it away and just tell us where we're at with that battle and what can we expect into the future?
Well, let's just start off by saying that the concept of a looming double envelopment, so to speak, of Ukrainian forces in the Donbass region is no longer fringe military analysis. It's been interesting to watch the mainstream media as their military experts have been compelled by reality to admit that there is going to be a decisive battle in the Donbass, and Ukraine is probably going to lose. And that's a difficult, assessment for them to make after having bought into the Ukrainian notion that the Russian army had been strategically defeated and was in a retreat with its forces badly depleted. Uncertainty whether or not they'd be able to reconstitute, et cetera, et cetera. The fact of the matter is, we are on the cusp of the beginning of phase 2 of the.
Okay, so what he's going into, and I'm going to try not to narrate as much, but I do have to kind of set it up. The Western media has been pushing this notion that somehow Russia wasn't up to snuff and they were getting their ass kicked and run the hell up out of the Ukraine. Okay, and it's funny actually. So what are they doing? All right, they're pushing a narrative, right, and trying to control it. And here you have a different opinion. And at one point in time, Scott Ritter says "we" while referring to the Russians. So, I mean, that might lead one to believe that, he's biased, and he may be. But I think he's pretty even-handed as far as balance is concerned. And if you watch the whole video, you'll probably agree. But certainly, what is being pushed by Western media is what we're about to see. Okay, this thing unfold. We're about to see what's really going on, and if it completely disagrees with what we've been told by our side, if you will, then this guy was right. All right, so I'll try not to interrupt.
Special military operation in Ukraine to achieve the stated objectives of the Russian leadership, which has always been the liberation of Donbass. When President Putin gave his announcement declaring the start of military operations, he made it clear that this was about the liberation of Donbass. He also made it clear that given the disposition of Ukrainian forces, the battle would have to be expanded into regions outside of the Donbass with numerous supporting operations. And we've discussed some of these. I mean, a key element of this entire conflict is the fact that Russia came in with forces that, doctrinally speaking, were inadequate to the task if you were viewing this as a conventional Russian invasion of Ukraine. That is, with the Ukrainian military able to deploy upwards of 600,000 troops on the battlefield, including regular troops, reserves, border guards, territorials, etc. A Russian invading force of 200,000 was operating, directly reverse of where it should be. Normal attacker to defender ratios of 3-to-1 are what you want, and Russia was attacking at a 1-to-3 disadvantage. But Russia wasn't carrying out your typical military, doctrinally adherent operation. Much of the Russian efforts were to shape the battlefield. In fact, all of Russia's efforts were to shape the battlefield in Ukraine to its advantage so that it could carry out a successful recapture of the Donbass. Key to this was the isolation of the bulk of the Ukrainian forces in the east. You isolate them by fixing them with a frontal attack. This was carried out in large part by the Russian militias or militaries of the Donetsk and Lugansk republics, supported by the Russian army. And then you likewise carry out diversion attacks or feints designed to hold other Ukrainian forces in place and divert resources to reinforce these areas. And this, of course, is what happened with the Russian feint on Kiev. And I call it a feint because anybody who thinks that 40,000 troops could capture a city of 3.1 million has been reading different military history books than I have. The same thing in the south, where a Russian, amphibious feint combined with ground attacks coming out of Crimea fixed Ukrainian forces in the Odessa area and compelled Ukraine to divert reinforcements there. Then Russia carried out a strategic air campaign, which targeted the logistics, command and control, and some, but not all, of the strategic lines of communications of the Ukrainian armed forces, to the point that I believe. Look, let me give you a historical example. In the Gulf War, when we were getting ready to launch the ground attack against the Iraqi military, General Schwarzkopf had this giant map up on the in the command room, command post, and on it was each one of the Iraqi divisions. And green, if the Iraqi division was in green, it meant that it was at near full strength. Yellow meant it had been attrited down to 60%, and red meant it was attrited down to below 50%. And the feeling was that we would launch the attack when we got a certain number of the Iraqi divisions down to red.
Attrition, I had to interrupt. Attrition means to grind down. So you're grinding the troops down from a large number to a small number. And he's talking hardcore military strategy right now. And that might be, a little exciting, but he's going somewhere with this, right? And then it goes into what the Most High actually has planned, which is eventually Russia is going to, decapitate Babylon. All right, so a little more of this, and then I'll skip to the part that I want to get to, and then we'll get a couple of precepts and close out.
And then we could carry out. And this required, extensive aerial bombardment, probes by the ground forces, etc. I mean, we were shaping the battlefield, and we finally shaped the battlefield to where we believed we could carry out our main attack. And in support of that main attack, there was significant redeployment of forces. For instance, we didn't send all our forces west early on because if the Iraqis had picked up on that, they'd be able to shift forces. So we shaped the battlefield, and then when the time was right, we began to push west, and then we carried out our main attack. Something similar is taking place in Ukraine. Phase one was all about shaping the battlefield, pinning the Ukrainian forces down, and then attriting them to a level that would facilitate a future phase two classic maneuver operation. And this doesn't mean that they had to be down below 50%. What this meant, though, is that you had to degrade their ability to carry out effective coordination with other Ukrainian military forces. You eliminated their maneuver options by denying them fuel, and then you attrited them. You killed as many as you can. If you take a look at what the Russians are claiming, they've taken out the bulk of the Ukrainian armored force. So the main battle of Ukraine hasn't even begun yet, and the Ukrainian military has been attrited down to basically combat ineffectiveness in any other situation besides the static defense. The Ukrainians.
By the way, I've noticed that a lot of the Ukrainians, they're driving around in civilian cars, which I'm assuming it's because their own military vehicles have been blown away, basically. Would that be an accurate inference?
That and hoping that the Russians won't attack civilian cars. I mean, when you
Sure.
you drive around at clearly a military target, you can get hit. If you drive around a civilian target, unless the Russians know what's inside the vehicle, they're hesitant to strike that vehicle because that would be a violation of the law of war. Which
just by the way he answered that question, right? Spot on, right? Lets you know the degree or the level of information we're dealing with here. going back to comprehension levels. All right, if you understand, you can see. You can see just by how forthright he is and his understanding of the battlefield and how he answered that question. Right? He said, "Well, they're driving civilian vehicles. What does that mean?" And he answered it both. Does that mean that they've knocked out all of their military vehicles? He said that's part of it. The other part is you're in there hiding, and the way he's just being forthright. Okay, there's a little more of this than I'll.
Again, I reiterate, Russia is assiduously adhering to. All this mythology of the brutality of the Russian forces, just an absurdity in the extreme. Is it possible that the Russians have inadvertently struck civilian targets that had no military purpose? Yes. Is it possible that a handful of Russian soldiers, in the heat of combat, let their anger and bloodlust get the better of them? Yes. But overall, from a global perspective, the Russian military has been assiduously adhering to the international humanitarian laws that govern combat. And
my thinking has always been that when you have 190,000 men invading another country, there's always going to be the chance that you're going to have a few psychos. I mean,
fuck the Geneva Convention. All right, so he set this up, right, to let you know basically what's really going on. Now we're going to jump to 32, I believe it was, about right here. And we'll get a little more information, then we'll bring out some scriptures and go ahead and close. Because I know this might be uninteresting to some folks, but basically, to get some real news on what's actually going on over there, right? This is a gem of it's a treasure trove, if you will, of actual news and not rhetoric and not, propaganda and skewed, just crap. All right, so let me check this real quick.
A new kind of warfare. We're not talking what occurred in phase one. We're talking real, honest to God, Russian military doctrine being brought to bear on the battle.
Okay, let me go back just a hair, because he's talking about the phase that we're about to see right now. Basically, he's saying phase one was to basically soften or prepare the battlefield for phase two. That's why it looked like they were losing. That's why it looked like they were running and all these different things. And what the West did is they used that narrative to make it look like Russia actually lost the war when they haven't even started the war yet. That's what he's going into right now.
I believe that this is going to be over.
That's what I want. That's what I want. Let me go back here, and he's going to say what's going on, and then Gonzalo's going to say what's going on. Scott Ritter is going to give his analysis or his synopsis of where this is going and how long it's going to take, okay, and why.
Ukraine with nothing to stop them, and they're heading towards Lvov. That creates a whole new political reality for the Ukrainian leadership. Mm-hmm. And that's when I think you start to see Zelensky say, just like the French leadership did in Paris in June of 1940, that it's over and we need to bring this thing to an end.
Okay, so this big arrow heading west, can we say that it should be within the next 4 weeks, or is it going to be 8 weeks or 12? What time frame are we talking about at this time? What is your expectation?
I believe that this is going to be over sooner rather than later. I don't believe phase two is going to last as long as phase one because of all the preparation that's been done. And once the major offensive operations start, I see the battle being wrapped up in a week or two.
Really?
Because we are talking a new kind of warfare. We're not talking what occurred in phase one. We're talking real, honest to God, Russian military doctrine being brought to bear on the battlefield. And we're also talking to Ukrainian military that's been prepped, softened up. We've been pounding their ribs, or the Russians have been pounding their ribs, so their hands are starting to drop down to protect their ribs, leaving their face wide open, and the Russians could come in with the haymaker and knock them out. The war's over. I mean, literally, my assessment is this war is over, except for the painful and bloody and awful necessary fulfillment of the final military objectives. But all the conditions have been created, put in place for a major strategic Russian military victory, the likes of which military historians haven't seen since World War II.
Yeah. There's another issue that I wanted to bring up. It seems very clear that NATO is getting exceedingly nervous, and in Poland, there's all kinds of crazy talk that is coming out of the high end of the political leadership of Poland. I mean, it seems that they're raring to go to get into a fight with the Russians, which seems, Kaczynski is talking. Kaczynski is the deputy prime minister, and it's common knowledge that he's basically the brains behind the Polish leadership, and he's the real leader of it. And he's talking about nuclear weapons for Poland. I mean, all kinds of crazy talk is coming out of Poland right now. Do you think that means anything, or is it just random desperation as the military reality of the situation dawns on them?
I think NATO has allowed the propaganda arm of Ukraine, the United States, Great Britain, and NATO to lull everybody into a false sense of complacency, to the point that they actually believed that Russia was losing the war in Ukraine. Now they are. I mean, they can read a map as well as I can, or better, because they've got better input. And I'm just telling you right now, there's not a single military professional in the world, when shown the map, the real map, where you can click on a unit and find out what its combat capability is, the fuel levels, ammo levels, morale levels, troop levels, etc. And you look at it, you're going, yep, boom, 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 boom. It's over. A 3-year-old could determine that outcome. And so now the Polish are waking up to the fact that Russia's about ready to win big, and NATO's not ready. I mean, NATO's sitting here talking about permanently deploying troops to the east. That's not going to happen for a long, long time. General Walters, the commander of U.S. forces in Europe, testified for the Congress the other day, where he said, they said, when are we going to get these for you? When are we going to know what we're talking about? He said, not till the Ukraine situation's over. They said, why? He said, because at that point in time, one, we'll know what kind of forces we need, and two, we'll know, who politically will support this. Because remember, America doesn't send forces over to Europe unless somebody invites them to. That means that somebody's willing to give them their territory, sign a standard of forces agreement, which cedes certain amount of sovereignty to American forces. They become de facto occupying forces, and then they have to pay for it. The day of America underwriting the bill for sending forces to Europe is over. So we're talking about a nation that's willing to take the political risk and the economic cost of receiving and sustaining American forces on their soil at a time when Europe is confronted with a potential economic breakdown, collapse. Who's going to pay for this? How are they going to pay for this? So the Poles right now are looking at all this. There is no NATO unity. I mean, Poland just froze relations with Hungary. You can't speak of a unified NATO when you have two key Central Asian members of NATO not have frozen relations. Turkey's not a willing participant. Germany's showing cold feet. Bulgaria is not really on board. Neither is Slovakia. So the idea that you have this unified NATO is absurd, and Poland knows the reality. So this is where you see the more nationalistic elements of any society, Polish or whatever, start to engage in the rhetoric of extremism. And the idea of a nuclear armed Poland is extreme. First of all, NATO, while the United States may consider putting nuclear weapons on Polish soil, to do that as a NATO move would require all 30 nations saying yes, and that's just not going to happen. So now the United States would have to enter into some sort of bilateral relationship with Poland outside the framework of NATO. And now we're talking about upending, arms control, negotiating positions that have been rock solid for decades that justify why the NATO nuclear arsenal was not to be counted as part of the American nuclear arsenal. It would change everything, and I just don't see the United States throwing away, decades of developed, arms control position just because some Polish extremist nationalist politician is unhappy. I want to say this too. People need to remember that this time last year, the notion that Europe is going to commit political suicide on behalf of Poland today because of what's happening in Ukraine is ludicrous. Poland is a nation that Europe recognizes to be an outlier when it comes to democracy, the values that Europe's supposed to hold on to, etc. Poland's popular now because they're on the front line. They're popular now because they've got Ukrainian refugees on their soil. But your European Union diplomat and educated government officials, they know the truth of Poland. They don't like Poland. So the idea that Europe's going to commit suicide for Poland is just absurd.
Yeah, I have a quick housekeeping note. There are over.
Okay, well, we'll stop it there. So much good stuff, all in a moment. I can't even stop it. So I guess that point is good as any. Right around in there, he comes up and he says, "This is the end of the United States. This is it. The United States is done." Right? Because these shall hate the whore. They're, oh, well, you got to pay us to come over and save you. That whole thing is over. That's why the Valley of Yehoshaphat, if you will, the Middle East has been stable because those sheiks have bought protection, right? I mean, if if you listen to this whole interview, what comes out of it is this is just the world is being run by the mafia, right? This is all mafioso proceedings going on. So anyway, all right. So enough of that. All right. Salakia for going on. I need to go ahead and end this. So, wow. All right. So there's your wars and rumors of war. All right. And we see what is coming. And what we do know after hearing that is exactly what I've been saying, is that Vladimir Putin has come back with a bigger, stronger fighting force, more well equipped, and he's about to absorb the Ukraine. He's about to absorb all of the countries around him that were once part of the Soviet Union to create an even bigger and more fearsome fighting force while everybody turns their back on the whore. All right, and we see that going on. Now, as I was bringing out yesterday, we could just go to 2 Peter. Okay. Always goes to Berean. Now, when you speak of Vladimir Putin, all right, NATO is bullying everybody around, right? Going back to what was going on in the Balkans in the 90s, right? Milosevic and that whole thing. And that's when they started, raining fire from heaven. If you understand war tact and what has been going on to bring us to this point. And Vlad is saying, look, that ain't happening again. So I will use these nukes. They went into that in the interview, how he doesn't want to, but it doesn't matter what you want to do. Your heart is in the hand of the Most High. Heart meaning your mind. So let's just start. Start here at 10, the day of the Lord. Okay? Because this is where we are right now. All right? Where are we? Knowing that this thing, hey, let's start right here. Start at 8, 2 Peter 3 and 8. But, beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is one day. All right? So when you're dealing with time, okay, don't get it twisted. You think you got time, you don't have time. All right? The Lord is not slack concerning his promises. Some men count slackness. Some people think this thing is going to go on forever. Most High is shortening the days right now. But is long suffering to usward, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. It's time for your ass to repent. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night to those who believe that this thing is going to go on. Right? Now here's Vlad. In which the heaven, I can't even say here's Vlad because somebody will jump up and say, well, that's not talking about Vlad. Well, who's going to launch? Who's got the nuclear? Who's walking around with the nuclear football right now? All right. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in the which the heaven shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. And here's the point. Seeing then that all these things shall be dissolved, what manner of persons ought ye to be in all holy conversation and godliness, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of the Most High, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Okay? This is how Babylon is going to be destroyed. Who's going to do it? Or who did the Most High put up to the task? Vladimir Putin. Period. This guy just said, this Scott Ritter guy just said, oh, this thing is going to be over quick. That part of the war. Okay? Further on in this interview, they speak of, well, Babylon can't put troops on the ground over there. They got to keep their eye on China because China is about to make good in Taiwan, which takes you into the greater world war, right? Which was spoken of yesterday as well. Kim Jong-il is waiting to go into South Korea, right? You can't see the plan shaping up. And for that matter, who's going to draw them out? The small hats are going to make their... Everybody is going to strike while the iron is hot. Right? And this thing is going to spiral out of control. What is this? We're talking about nukes here. All right? I saw this yesterday. Let me see if I can pull it up. 2 days ago, Putin takes nuclear football to Russian politician's funeral amid Ukraine war. Okay? 2 days ago. Putin attended the funeral with nuclear bag. Okay? This is how close we are.
Thinking about...
All right? What manner of person, seeing that all these things shall be burned up, how? With the nukes. This nigga got his hand on the button right now. All right. And of course, we got some prophecies that have to come before they launch. But what are we looking at? Look at this guy. It's the launch codes. And he's showing his power. He wants everybody to see this. This is a show of force. He could barely move. He's like a penguin. He got on all that body armor. You think that fool ain't got on a vest? Specially made? All right, enough of that. Let's look at the other one real quick and I'll go ahead and close.
Russian President Vladimir Putin. He attended the funeral of Vladimir Zhirinovsky, a far-right politician who died on April 6. Putin's bodyguards had a nuclear bag in their hands. The hall was evacuated. Putin attended the funeral. Russian President Vladimir Putin attends the funeral of far-right Russian politician Vladimir Zhirinovsky. The hall was completely evacuated for security reasons before Putin's visit. Then the Russian leader entered the hall with his bodyguards. Putin laid flowers at the coffin of Zhirinovsky. The Russian leader's visit also found a place in the world press. Attention was drawn to the black bag in the hands of Putin's bodyguards. There was an emphasis on the nuclear threat. In the bag is allegedly the system that controls Russia's nuclear weapons. Zhirinovsky, 76, had been diagnosed with the coronavirus in recent months.
This is where your attention should be, okay? There's a brother right now bringing out the implant that lets you pay with your hand information on Nate them, right? How close are we? What manner of persons ought you to be? You're supposed to be pushing this, okay? Looking for, and this is 2 Peter 3:12, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Here's where we should be. All right, so with that, we hope that the elect were edified, you brothers and few sisters, and with that, we're going to say shalom.